Hi everyone and welcome to this video where I talk about interesting and non-interesting reads I had during the summer. If I sound a bit groggy, it's because I am, but I have the largest cup of tea I've ever made in my hand, so I think we'll get through this. So, I think I'll just jump straight in. I did go to Belgium this summer, as every summer, to go to a festival, and each summer I'm wondering which book am I going to bring. But this year and last year it was kind of easy. I decided to bring a Murakami novel. I had in my head planned since last year that I was going to read Kafka on the Shore. Then a lot of people have told me, or 3 people, which is a lot for this channel, that I should go for another one because I should savor that book for last. So I'm actually starting to near the end of Murakami, or so it feels. I don't know exactly how many books I have left, but I've read more than I have left of his books, which is quite a scary thought, but I'm pulling through or whatever. But I read this Killing of Commendatore, if that's how you say it, by that said author. It's a gigantic book, but it's not that long. It's about 800 pages in the Norwegian edition, and I thought that would be a great pairing for my festival trip. And it ended up being. I can already say that I think it's my second favorite Murakami novel so far. Just a smidgen behind 1Q84, which is still obviously the best one he's ever written. It's like I never doubt that at all, and I will be very surprised if I read another novel of his that's even better. But this came quite close. It's about this portrait painter that he's not really successful or unsuccessful, but this one day he gets a calling to do a portrait for this one person, and he's going to be paid a lot of money. So he's a bit taken aback about these news. And the more he gets to know this person, the weirder the relationship gets. And he moves into this cottage in the mountains where there's a painting, and there's some absurdities around this painting and everything in this place, I guess. If I remember this correctly. It doesn't really matter. I could easily picture myself on this mountain or in this village, just being there with my paintings and painting, and the curious things that happened around him. It has all the things that you would expect from a Murakami novel. It has the jazzy music. It has the more dimensions that you're used to, and I just love being in that sphere. At times, I would think that if a person didn't like Murakami and read this novel, I would assume that that person thought more than once that it sort of dragged out a bit. But I can't really say anything else than that I just love being in his universe. Even though it's sometimes slow, it doesn't feel like it because it's just enjoyable and exciting. I would say this is like reading a spy novel without the spies, but it has the tension of a spy novel, but it's just weirder, and you know that the stuff in this novel wouldn't have happened to anyone, but I still like to imagine myself I could imagine that these things would have happened, and I would like these things to happen just for the excitement of it. Thinking about it now, it's kind of surreal because I can't remember exactly in what order things happened, or if the things I've said to you happened in the way I said to you that it happened. I just am left with the feeling of really wanting to read that book again. So I guess that's all that matters. And I continue my love relationship with Murakami. Still haven't read a Murakami novel that I haven't liked. But this one is probably my second favorite of his, which says a lot after all this time. What happened next in my reading life is something that has happened before. It's like the feeling of really wanting to read another Murakami novel, but then deciding that you want to save that moment for later when you're depressed and it's winter and you don't have any books that you really want to read. So I picked up a book I thought maybe would have been a little bit demanding, and that is, I don't know what this is called in English or if it's even translated to English. It is called Ferdaminni by Aasmund Olavsson Vinje, a famous Norwegian author that writes in Norwegian nynorsk, as we all love on this channel. It's about him traveling across the country in the 19th century. I can't really remember what was the point of this novel, just that he traveled around the country and he wrote about the things he saw. And actually, this was kind of amusing. I laughed out loud several times, but I still hated reading it. Because reading in like an old Norwegian nynorsk dialect with words you don't really understand, at times it was demanding. It didn't fit my mood at all, but it's not that often I laugh out loud from a book written in the 19th century, so I should be happy, but I wasn't. This was one of the first books I actually bought myself when starting this YouTube channel, because at some point I thought I'd have to read it. Maybe if I'm older this would suit me better, or just if I read it at a different time, because I could enjoy reading about neighbors fighting over nothing again, but maybe it's just a little bit too old for me by now. Maybe. Anyway, I wasn't discouraged. I thought to myself, let's pick up another modern classic, or let's pick up a modern classic instead of a classic. And it's Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. So this is, of course, probably a book that you're all known to. Anyway, you all know this book. It's about a guy that works in a place where he has to burn books because the society is quite a dystopian one. But one day he starts wondering, why does he do all of this? And actually, I quite enjoyed this novel. It was like, so now I've read 1984 and I read Brave New World, which is sort of, I think of these three books as a trio. I like this the best because it was so simplistic in the way it was written, and also in the way that it was explained, all of it, and quite some like a concise sort of storyline. I don't know what to say. I just liked it. I've written in my notes, like, simple yet effective. And I that's how I feel about it. I cared for the main character. I was pulled along for the ride, and I liked how it started, how it went on, and how it finished, I guess. I was more moved by this than by Brave New World and 1984. This made more of an emotional impact. Maybe because it's like a lot of it has to do with books, and well, a lot of countries nowadays like to ban books again, which is dystopian in itself. And is it dystopian in itself? I don't know, but the kind of books they're banning makes me lose faith in humanity. I guess that's how it is. But then I gave up and I read another one of Murakami's novels, and this is Colorless, Tsukuru, Tazaki. When I read Murakami's novels, the first time I read the names of the people, that sticks in my head and I never change. So I probably can't name a single person from the Murakami universe without it sounding wrong. So I guess I know that more people have it like this. Anyway, so that's that. And this book is about a guy that has 4 friends. One day these friends decide that they don't want anything to do with him anymore, and they don't explain why. So we never, in that moment, we don't know why these friends have abandoned him. And so he meets this woman that says, you should really try to figure this out, and thus his journey begins. I love the people in Murakami's novels being like normal, but not normal at all. So he works with planning subway stations, train stations. He plans them out. He has a regular job. He's living by himself, being normal. But then again, he lives by himself for 20 years, and it's just like, well, yeah, it is what it is. This is my life, which just is not normal at all, I guess. There's no talk about emotions around this. I guess there's not that many people that could have been alone for 20 years without people around them. and then just everything's okay. But that's a thing in Murakami novels I like. It sort of normalizes the abnormal in a sense, but it's not like it's something crazy, and not in this instance at least. Anyway, I of course ended up liking this novel. Not as thrilling as I would have liked it to be, but I just like the words passing by in his novels. Then over to a Norwegian modern classic, and the way you can see that it's a Norwegian modern classic is that it has horrible, like, it's probably, the binding is probably good, but they don't look good at all. This might be the case for many other classics in other countries, but this is how we do it in Norway, and I don't like it. But at least this is Ikaros by Axel Jensen. So Axel Jensen is probably known mostly as a writer, of course, but also he was married to Marianne, that also had a relationship with Leonard Cohen, which we Norwegians think is like great because she's Norwegian and he's famous, so we all love that. This book is about this book is about a man going to Sahara and getting to know the culture. And I don't know anything to say about this book. I hated it. It was boring from start to finish, but it was short, so I finished it. Shouldn't have finished it, and now I can probably throw other Axel Jensen books away if I have them. And by throwing away, I mean give away. After that, I decided to read another depressing novel. It's Crying in Mart by Michelle Zauner. So for those of you that have followed my channel, you know that I bought this book because I thought it was going to be funny. Obviously, or should be obvious, that I didn't read on the back of it because it says that it's a novel about a young woman that loses her mother quite early, and she struggles with identity and struggles in general. So it's not a funny novel at all, but I thought it was. That's why I bought it. But when I talked about it last time, people said in my comments that, well, this is a depressing piece of literature and I should have listened. Because it was. At times it was too depressing. So she loses her mother. Her mother is Korean. She's American Korean with American father. And the reason why it's crying in H Mart is because she goes grocery shopping, and she tries to like keep her culture through her food, if that's the right way of putting it. At least food is very central to this story, and trying to find identity and hope in loss and all of that stuff. I enjoyed part of it. It's always useful to read a book where my perspective isn't relevant at all, where nothing is similar to my life. That helps. So there's always something insightful in them, but also it was a little bit too long. So after a while, I sort of was a bit fed up with the theme and with the sadness of it, because it is sad for quite a while. Naturally, I decided that I wanted something light to read after going through all of that, so I ended up starting this one, The Unlikely Pilgrimage of Harold Fry by Rachel Joyce. So this story is about a retired man that one day gets this letter from a person that he has known from earlier in his life, and he decides to set out on a journey. Because I should have said that she's ill, she's going to die, and he thinks that going from where he lives to where she's hospitalized will save her life. Should also mention that it sort of feels like they have had this romantic thing and his current marriage isn't working all that great. And so he starts to walk and continues to walk and walk. That's sort of the whole book. Entertaining enough, but there were a little bit too few of the why is he doing this in this way? Why are the people that he meets interesting? And why isn't more things happening when he's supposed to go across the country? I think I ended up giving this 3 out of 5. In retrospect, I think it was a bit too thin of a soup, as we say in Norwegian. Don't know if you say that in any other languages, but that's how I felt. Obviously, I found some enjoyment in it, but not that much. I think actually that I made the masterpiece of ending August with my favorite read of the year so far, which is quite impressive since I did love the Murakami novel that I read in the beginning. But that book was The World of Yesterday by Stefan Zweig. This name has been popping up all over the place since I started YouTube. I know he has a lot of fans. It's his biography, and if I remember correctly, this was published after his death, and I don't know if it was planned that this was going to be published, but it's the story of Europe, art, and how he's afraid of where Europe is going, and rightfully so. So he was born, I think, in 1890, and he died during the Second World War. So he lived through the First World War and then saw the rise of the Second World War and the evil that it came with. He's also Jewish and Austrian, which makes this whole thing a lot worse. The beautifulness of the beauty of this novel is how he talks about his passion for art and how he describes why art is important, what it meant to him, and then it slowly walks over into what is happening in the world with the rise of fascism and all of that nonsense. And it's written in this creepy way after a while, where you as a reader know where all this is heading. He knows a lot of the stuff that happened, but he dies in the middle of the Second World War, and I think the perspective that is left with us, the other people after the war, is a little bit even worse. But he describes the evil while it's happening and how he has to flee the country and flee basically everywhere, and just how he talks with other people about what is happening around him. Also felt very heartwarming the way he talks about being European instead of being Austrian or being from that country or that country. It's the same view that I have each time I go to Belgium. I feel happy that we're like a one big collectiveness instead of being individual countries with all the feuds from the past. It's touching, but it's way more touching the way he describes it with the situation that he's in. Also, it's like teleporting to a time where I've always liked history, but it's in the details you get to expand your mind. The way he talks about not having a passport, at one time during that span of his life, they started doing passports. Before that, he went to the US, he went to India. He went there, nothing, who cares? And being my generation, having to have started my life, could have flown anywhere, and then you started with the security and all of that stuff. It's just an interesting journey we've all been on, and at times depressing. I would say now it feels mostly depressing, but maybe that's me. Anyway, it's also filled with things and then I met James Joyce and we talked about writing, and I talked about how I could translate one of his novels, and all of that stuff, which is it's very fun, also very strange, imagining the celebrities of the written language talking to each other during all of this. Also, it describes individual cities in Europe and how they're all different in a way that I've sometimes earlier, take Paris for example, where we talk about Paris as a place where everyone wanted to go if they were going to write a book or paint a picture or anything like that. He describes why this is, which is something that I haven't really found anywhere else. So it's small things. The more books you read, you get small pieces of puzzles where you can align them. Yeah. Anyway, I just love this novel. It was gorgeous, fantastic, any superlative you want to insert. It's one of my favorite reads thus far this year. A clear 5-star. So, that's it. I think in my last video I talked about how happy I was with the books I've read lately, and I guess that's what, now I said that in that video because of this book. So if you haven't read it, I do hope you will read it at some point. Very informative and gorgeous. Even Karl Ove Knausgård recommends this novel. I know how internet loves that man, so do check it out. If you have read any books that you would like to recommend any other people, please leave them in the comments. I hope you'll check out this book. If you took anything from this video, please read this book at some point. So thank you for watching. I hope you have a terrific day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!